Hi, Charles Moscowitz here for a special edition of Charles Moscowitz Live, normally heard Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight, although on Fridays I've not been doing the live program because it's Shabbos, so I'm doing it a little bit early today. Michael D. Shaw is with us, as is usually the case on Friday. He's a science writer. He's a Substack author. So, Mike, to me, the number one story right now is this mad and insane dash to push the United States into World War III with a nuclear power, Russia. The policy of this country since really the end of World War II, right up through till Trump, has been to avoid war with Russia. It's a nuclear power. We don't want to. Do we really want to destroy 2/3 of the planet? And yet now you have these this really toxic combination of neocons and warmongers and arms dealers and corrupt oligarchs pushing the United States into sending American boys and girls to a Eurasian war front where we have no interest. Neither side is, it reminds me a little bit of World War I. And in a way, World War II. I mean, Truman said when Russia and Germany were at war, we ought to stay back because we don't have an interest in either side. Let them duke it out. We don't have an interest. Both sides are bad. Both sides are corrupt. We don't have any interest there. What the hell do you think is going on?
Well, there's always the neocons, and there's always the chicken hawks.
Yeah.
And there's always
let them go in. Let them send their sons and daughters, right?
Yeah, how about that?
Let Mitt Romney's 5 sons who never served, let them go in while he's talking about the need to shut down airspace,
What is our dog in that fight exactly?
I think our dog in that fight is that you've got some very corrupt American oligarchs. I'm a little afraid to mention their names because we are live on YouTube. One of them is a former president and his wife. Others are this billionaire Hungarian. Others are the present occupant of the White House and his son. And we can name others without naming them by name, who have corrupt deals in Ukraine. That's what we're going to go to war for. Whatever happened to the old left? Whatever happened to the anti-war movement? Not just even during Vietnam, but during the Iraq war and Afghanistan, we saw protests. Where's Cindy Sheehan? Where are the people who used to say, no oil, no war, right? This is what about what? Remember, Bush lied, people died. Halliburton.
The unifying factor on the left has always been anti-Americanism. So
now all of a sudden they're trading in their peace placards for signs saying stand with Ukraine.
Peace was just a hobby horse.
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that literally right around my own hometown of Boston. I've seen people had all these peace placards up everywhere they're painting their house with peace, rainbow and big peace signs. Now they're trading them in for support Ukraine. Why should we support either side? We don't have an interest here. Look, I feel bad for Ukraine. I tilt toward Ukraine because I don't think it's right that a sovereign country is being attacked. But at the same time, neither side is so pristine. This is not exactly, it's not quite so cut and dried.
No, it's not so cut and dried. And why aren't the same people who want us to go in there advocating that we use the military to protect our own border, for example?
Well, that's right. Like, for example, the southern border, where now you have, I just saw coming over the wires, a huge gathering of caravans approaching the southern border. And we're talking like, and these people, they're not portrayed, these aren't poor people. They're being bussed there, frankly.
Yeah.
And you see them with their nice backpacks and they're well dressed and they're well fed. They're not. This isn't an issue of people who are escaping. You hear some of the overcharged media. Oh, this is like in Nazi Germany. No, I don't think so. Mexico, Guatemala. They're not putting people on trains. They're not building concentration camps. These are people who see an opportunity, and I frankly don't blame them, of getting into the United States and going on the dole and living well.
Yeah, it's a little screwed up but it's sort of shocking the people lining up for us to get involved.
It is.
They can't really articulate what our interest is exactly.
That's right. No, they can't. And there are no interests. And, you have to watch who they are and what their interests are to understand this. Do you think anybody really gives a damn about Ukraine? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, do you think they care about lives there? I mean, it's very interesting. Anyways.
Well, I like how it's being fought on social media. You see, you're supporting the Ukrainians by putting a Ukrainian flag on your Twitter account. I'm not exactly sure what that does, but
well, and also if you tend to disagree with the warmongers, they say, "Oh, you're pro-Russia. You're pro-Putin." It's the same kind of propaganda that's used in any war. I mean, I suppose
never
that
changes, does it?
Yeah, in the build-up to World War I, if you disagreed with the Wilson administration, which lied to the American people and said we weren't going to get involved in that war, shouldn't have never gotten involved. And then once we did, it's like if you stood up against the war, you were pro-German, and they were putting people in prison who spoke out against the war, including socialist candidate Eugene Debs.
Yes.
Anybody who was dissenting from that view. Those were the war years, and people don't realize it during World War I. This country was the closest to fascism we've ever been. You had people swept up, sort of like the protesters on January 6th. I don't want to go too far into that.
No.
They just swept them up by the hundreds and put them in prison. You had that phenomena going on during that war. World War II, not too far distant from that either. The dissidents, whatever happened to the Vietnam protests, right? I think that, in my opinion, the left is not doing it now. They're being silent, I should say, because I think a certain Hungarian billionaire and others, they financed the anti-war movement against Iraq and against Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They're now financing the pro-war side. So there's no money in it. I mean, that's just an opinion.
Up in this. I mean, there's going to be a certain number of people who are just stupid. But
yeah.
Do they not think about it at all? Is it such an emotionally charged issue?
They don't have any skin in the game either. These are the same fat cats who, their sons and daughters aren't going to be sent over there to fight in this Eurasian war front, which is completely, I mean, they're insane. Who is it that said that we have to immediately send American, jet fighters into Poland? I mean, the Poles said, no, thank you. They don't want to have war with Russia. And by the way, I think if they did, they'd probably bomb the Kremlin, but and I hope they don't. But the point is, they don't want to get sucked into this. I think it was Blinken pushing for it. And by the way, the same people, Blinken and Victoria Nuland and these others, they were the ones who were behind, to a large degree, the coup d'etat in Ukraine in the first place in 2014, the so-called orange color revolution. They backed it, and then they tried to immediately push Ukraine into NATO, which was crazy because Ukraine should be neutral. I mean, they act like, oh, well, somehow there's something wrong with a neutral country. Look at Finland, look at Austria, look at Sweden. They're neutral countries, and they're quite successful. They've stayed out of war, and they're fine. You don't have to be joining a military alliance where you have a 1,000-mile border with Russia, and you're right in the heart of within airstrike of Moscow. That doesn't make sense. I understand Russia's position there. They're not trying to, I don't think they would have snuffed out Ukraine. I think that they're doing it because the Ukrainians, after the so-called orange color revolution, started to apparently, and this is according to Victoria Nuland herself in congressional testimony, they started to develop biological research labs. Really? They want to have biological.
How heavy is the U.S. involved in those biological labs?
Well, that's the question. We haven't found out. We see that Anthony Fauci has disappeared. He's been put under mothballs, apparently.
Yeah.
And it's not just because the pandemic, they've decided to declare that over de facto, but it's also because maybe Senator Rand Paul might call him up and ask him some questions about that, just like he did about the Wuhan lab. I mean, this is like, I actually think that Russia has a casus belli here. If in fact, Ukraine was allowing for biological weapons to be developed, 22 plants apparently on this soil. I mean, first of all, the insanity of that anyways. I mean, Ukraine is a failed state. It's not a stable country. You don't put that kind of stuff there. It shouldn't be anywhere, but if it is going to be anywhere, it should be in a place that's safe, like maybe.
It should be a safe place like China, for example.
Yeah, sure. They should put it in the Bahamas or something, or the Bikini Atoll, somewhere where they can control it. I'm not saying they should do it at all, but in the middle of why not put it in Iran? I mean, this is insane. And it's threatening the entire population of the world. We could have, Rand Paul said it best. He said, we have to get to the bottom of the causes of the COVID-19 virus and whether or not it was a gain of function. Because if we don't, then the next one could be far worse. It could make COVID-19 look like kindergarten play. It could wipe out half the population of the planet. Anyways, I don't mean to sound alarms here, but.
Well, no, I mean, there's always been this mad scientist mentality with these virologists because, as I've said on previous programs, what else are you going to do? Put them in a petri dish and watch them grow? I mean, so.
Well, why are they doing this stuff at all? It's not ethical.
The only way you can get money for this stuff is if there's a defense application. So if you're studying some virus, DOD doesn't care about the life and times of such and such virus. But if they think they can be weaponized, then they probably care.
Yeah, but President Obama, of all people, signed an executive order approved by Congress to ban that kind of research in the United States. And he did so in 2014 because it was too dangerous.
Well, that's right. So they ship it off somewhere else.
Well, yeah, but the point is they did it behind both Obama's and Trump's back. I'm getting comments here. Let's see. Isn't Zelensky Jewish? Yeah, I think he is. So what? I don't see how that's relevant. I mean, unfortunately, I think that this could increase anti-Semitism because he is and because he's acting crazy, but that's an opinion. Why did Ukraine vote no? Vote no on what? Look, the Russians, I'm getting comments here on YouTube. The Russians have offered, look, Ukraine is in no position to negotiate because the Russians are moving into Dnipropetrovsk, which is right in the heart of the country. And once they reach that city and they shut that city off, if they do, then it's really over because they will have bisected the country. It's like General Grant at Vicksburg. Once he won there, the South was bisected. They couldn't, he split the place in two. And I think if that happens, it's going to be over for Ukraine, and Russia's grinding down on the big cities. So, they're not in a position. I feel bad for them, but they have to make some concessions. And Russia right now, I think, is offering a reasonable set of principles. Firstly, they want them to recognize Crimea as part of Russia, which historically it is. It's 98% native Russian, and it was handed over to Ukraine Oblast during the Soviet times by Khrushchev. So they want that, and they want Ukraine to recognize the two independent provinces in the Donbass region, which are predominantly Russian, and which have been, there had been terrible human rights abuses by the Ukrainians over there, particularly in the form of this Nazi, this Azov battalion, which is neo-Nazi, and which, by the way, is funded by, interestingly, not to make a connection here, but by an oligarch who also heads Burisma Oil. Need I say more? Need we say more? The point is that Russia is offering these terms, plus a guarantee that Ukraine will not join NATO in exchange for peace. To me, that seems reasonable under the circumstances, given the fact that Ukraine is on the losing side here. They're not really in a position to negotiate, and they should do this to save the rest of their country from complete overrun. I mean, right now there's something like 4 million refugees. I mean, what's next? They
That
had
really happened fast too. That was
yeah.
amazing.
So
You put it that way, it sounds reasonable, but then again, people can focus on the bombing of hospitals and whatnot, which certainly with the technology these days, that's not a mistake. So
right.
it's one of those like Iran and Iraq wars where you wish both sides could lose.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's not, as I've said, both sides, neither side is good here. And the United States, I think, by even our getting involved, by our in any way lending encouragement, all it does is prolong the war.
Yeah.
I mean, if Zelensky and the Ukrainians recognize that they're not going to get the world drawn in, then they will have to make peace and and maybe swallow some bitter pills in the process. But at least they'll save their country, and they'll go back to the way it was before the coup of 2014, when they generally were operating like the other Russian-influenced areas like Belarus and others, and maintaining a friendly relationship with the nuclear mother Russia, and also being sovereign. There's nothing wrong with that. Look at Finland. Finland, after World War II, maintained like a relationship with Russia where they kind of agreed that they would be, they would be neutral, that they would let Russia have a say in their foreign policy. They wouldn't be in a warlike position. And in exchange, they were left alone by Russia, and they developed a fantastic society.
Yeah.
One of the most successful in the world, actually. They call it like a startup country where all these high-tech companies, they've got a great thing going. There's nothing wrong with that. They don't have to be involved with war on either side. They're neither Western nor Russian. They are neutral.
Well, does this situation pose sort of a philosophical question that did Russia have a better way of promoting its interests than just actually attacking Ukraine?
I have no idea. I don't think that I don't think they had to do what they did, but on the other hand, who knows what was going on there? I think that it's been not good news for them either, because Ukraine is made up of strong nationalistic people that don't want. What is Russia going to do? Occupy it? They don't want. I'm not sure. I don't know what Russia's thinking, but I think that they're trying to stop the biological warfare centers. They're trying to secure the nuclear plants, which I think they've done. And then they're going to try to sue for peace, I assume. I don't think that they want to control all of Ukraine in perpetuity. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I guess what I was saying is, did they have a diplomatic way of handling this that could have worked?
Oh, I don't. Where is the United States diplomacy? Why aren't we? Why isn't Biden?
Well, that's a whole other.
Instead, he sends that giggling hyena over there, frankly. What the heck, what an embarrassment anyways. Can you imagine their answer is to send Kamala Harris? Holy mackerel. I think we're getting a call. All right, my phone line is now up, so we should be able to get a phone call. I'm having somebody, let me just give out the number because someone is saying they want to call in. 617-396-4958. 617-396-4958. Or you can send a chat on either the Rumble station or the YouTube station. Anyways, what the heck is wrong with Kamala Harris anyways? I have a theory about her.
Okay.
Besides the fact that she's obviously, she comes across as completely unread and unprepared. She doesn't even seem to know that Ukraine is not in NATO. She doesn't, it's like a high school student who, didn't do his homework and gets up and gives a presentation. It's embarrassing and it's mortifying to this country. But then she starts with this cackling and giggling in the middle of like when they're talking about refugee children.
Yeah, it's a pretty somber thing.
Yeah, and My theory is that she's been a long time advocate for marijuana use and for legal marijuana. I think she's stoned, right? I mean, I've smoked a little marijuana in my day, and when you smoke it, you do giggle a little. I mean, you might laugh at things inappropriately. You might ramble. It sort of like has that effect. I think she's token up. That's my opinion.
Well, she's token up, and she's also very stupid.
That's well, I mean, it's the lesson there is that you cannot and should not appoint people just on questions of race. I mean, that's the big mistake. And I think that if there's one thing that we can learn from this debacle, it's that. And I hope people are starting to realize that. And there were certainly plenty of women who could, in a way, I heard somebody say, well, they always talk about women like this. That's insulting to women. I may not agree with her, but I don't think Elizabeth Warren is cackling. I don't think if she was vice president, she'd be there giggling and rambling. She acts with dignity, even though I don't agree with her politics.
Oh, she'd be obnoxious in her own way.
She'd be obnoxious, but she's serious and she's sober. I mean, would Ruth Bader Ginsburg cackle? Right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are plenty of great women who don't do this. They're serious people. They're great leaders. I mean, Margaret Thatcher wasn't cackling when she went into the Falklands. I mean, this is like an insult to women to say that, oh, well, this is how women behave.
Well,
I don't think so.
Let me pivot to an insult to women then.
Okay.
What about this so-called transgender swimmer in the Ivy League?
What's the deal with that? I mean, it's women. I mean, now you have. I mean, what's the strangest thing about this is that you see, like, I don't know, there was a Jeopardy contestant who was transgendered,
right? And
they were like, for the first time, a woman has broken the glass ceiling and is in the top level Jeopardy contestants with this guy, basically.
Right.
I mean, so it's really over for women because you have men putting on a skirt and they're
then let me pose this to you, and no disrespect to the audience. Right. Is it that women are that stupid that they're willing to take this? Is it they're afraid to speak up?
Some are speaking up, but they do it in a very couched way. Now you have, of course, these greasy guys going into girls' locker rooms and girls' bathrooms. I mean, isn't anything sacred? It's disgusting. I mean, I'm sorry, but
here's the other thing. I can feel sorry for the girls that are swimming up to a point. Mm-hmm. But all they had to do, once they saw that the NCAA was completely in favor of this, would just not show up. There'd be no swimming, and that's it.
They might as well not show up because
they might as well not show up. The other thing is
all of women's athletes are now going to be dominated by men.
Yeah. So not only are the stakes very high here, but what is there to lose? Who cares who wins NCAA swimming? You're never going to make any money off it. You're doing it because you're an athlete, you want to do it. But what's the point if the stakes are completely ruined? So why don't they just en masse, so that, as the old cliche goes, take their football home?
I know. I mean, look, I remember a couple of years ago, Martina Navratilova, who's a top tennis player. She's a lesbian, just self-described. She talked about this and she was blackballed for it. She said, look, men are competing in the sport and it's no longer women. There's a different biology there. There's a different physiology, and women are no longer going to be in it. I mean, they're driving out women. Why? It's like, why bother having women's sports after all they went through and all the struggle to get, Title IX and everything else.
Oh yeah.
Now you have these guys coming up. And by the way, if somebody wants to declare themselves a woman or a man, that's their business. I'm not that I see that as a personal matter, but at the end of the day, they're not, and they can't. It kind of like, they can find their place along the way, but if they choose to live as a woman,
why are people putting up with this?
Well, that's a good question. What do you think, Mike? I mean, is there like a political power and agenda behind this that's frightening to people because they can
It's
be
what's called,
destroyed?
right. It's what's called incrementalism. It is not well known, although it's better known now than it was, that the sexual revolution, as everybody remembers from the 60s, was originally started by full-on perverts. They had no big interest in heterosexual activity. It was that was a front to move the battle forward.
Right.
So now it's gone beyond that, and it's become a transgender situation. And the conclusion is, people have known this in Hollywood, but I'm speaking in general. There's a lot more perverts out there than we would like to think. And a lot of them are in politics. And
Right.
somehow, I mean, when you have the president of Georgetown University saying that he fully supports transgenders in sports, forget about the fact that that statement is absurd in itself, because that ruins sports. There may as well not be women's sports. But the fact that no one is rebelling against, I mean, the parents of these girls are speaking up.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't the girls just drop off the team? It would be over. It'd be over instantly.
Right. No, you're
How
right.
about, we're not going to be on the team if this guy is, period. End of story.
I know. Where are the fathers concerned about their daughters getting roughed up by some of these guys, frankly?
Well, that's like asking what happened to virility, I guess.
Right. I guess. I mean, they've been indoctrinated along with everyone else.
Because you'd be toxic masculinity.
Oh, exactly. That's right. If they stand up for their daughter, and I mean, you mentioned perverts going back. It's probably the late Dr. Judith Reisman, who passed away recently and who's been a guest on my program many times. She exposed Kinsey, who I think was the sort of the Pied Piper of all of this back in the 1950s, with his study of the male and then study of the female. And, he got his research mainly from the worst elements of society, and he was doing stuff to babies. And I mean, just really, really sick stuff that Judith Reisman revealed. And he was promoted as this great medical thinker. And, he's put on the cover of Time magazine, all-American guy with a bow tie. The guy was a complete pervert. I mean, it seems obvious. I mean, if you look at her work. And I think he was sort of the one who got the ball rolling on a lot of this stuff, because some of his studies, which are extremely flawed, to put it mildly, were used in court cases. They were essentially,
absolutely.
They started to use them as a way to institute law in this country.
And the reason that she didn't get the traction that she deserved is that everyone knew she was right.
That's right.
So what are you going to do now? Erase what happened in the last 50 years? It was terrible, but this, you could see it's still going on now.
Well, I mean, the book, they keep pushing the envelope. I mean, I remember when it was like 10 years ago, there was a family in my community where one of the daughters was deciding to transition to becoming a man. And it was a scandal in the community. And these are liberal people. And it was like, we felt sorry. We felt like there was something seriously wrong psychologically. And people kind of looked askance. And it was like, now it's like, this is a boy, and that's it. You don't question it. I mean,
well, people want to be hip, right?
Right. And by the way, again, if somebody wants to live their life as a man or as a woman and they're not born that way, that's their business, but they're really ultimately, in the end of the day, they're not. And we have to deal with truth, and you can't lie. You go ahead, I mean, do it, but to actually have this declared as such and to question that and dissent from it. I mean, if somebody wants to be called he or she, I'll do that out of just manners. I'll call somebody whatever they want to be called if they let me know. And people have called me things I don't like to be called. You know what I mean, right? I mean, that's fine. but it doesn't make it so. I mean, that's really my point. And, the science is not on this side.
Well, there is no science. I mean,
No.
and who are these doctors that are giving these injections to these patients to stop puberty and
Oh my God.
reverse hormones?
And we don't know the long-term effects of that. And, look, this gets into the bill that was being presented by Governor DeSantis in Florida. I understand that this has to do with teaching sexual matters to children, kindergarten to third grade. I don't care if it's heterosexual or homosexual or transgender or what. None of that is appropriate for children up till third grade. It's that
You
simple.
ask yourself, why is this so strongly pushed? And I'm telling you, and this is a hard pill to swallow, there are a lot of perverts out there that now feel emboldened to
I
come
agree.
out like this.
I think that's probably true. It's either that or it's just people on the far left who think that they want to reconnoiter human nature. They're social engineers. This whole concept, if you take a look at the background, they make a differentiation between sex and gender, right? The whole term gender is something that was invented shortly after World War II, and it was invented by two people. I mean, you could do a Wikipedia on this. Simone de Beauvoir, who was the wife of Jean-Paul Sartre,
Right.
and who was abused by Jean-Paul Sartre physically for many years, who wrote a book, the name escapes me right now, something female, and she came up with this, I think she coined the phrase gender, which she said was different than sex. In other words, it was a socially constructed idea of what it is to be a male or female. And then also there was this New Zealand sexologist, Dr. Edward Money, I think his name was, who was starting the idea that you could do sex change at an early age and promoting this. And he was involved in a couple of scandals that were not good. In one case, these parents brought this young child to him. They were twins, and one of them seemed to have female qualities, even they were both male. And he said, well, we're going to turn this child into a girl. And he recommended, putting in a vagina. I mean, which the parents didn't go that far, but they went along with it. And they didn't tell him. And when then he reached the age, he became like a teenager, and he realized it was something really wrong. And he became aware of all of it. And he became aware of who this Dr. Money was. He went in, he tried to kill Dr. Money. Didn't succeed.
Wow.
But the point is that this guy.
I didn't know that story at all.
This was on 60 Minutes. I mean, this is years ago. The point is that these two characters, along with a few other people, they're the ones who cooked up this idea that there's such a thing as a gender as opposed to a sex. In other words, there's not a male or female, it's man and woman, and that the man and woman is something that is concocted by societies. It's not something that's real. It's something that, we impose male-like and female-like social constructs on our children. And by doing so, we're doing something wrong, putting aside the fact that every society all the way through history, and including the most primitive, they do this. I mean, we all socialize our children at a fairly early age to grow up to be male or female. And we give them certain attributes that are different in different societies. I mean, what might be seen as male in one might not be in another. That's true. There are social and cultural antecedents to it, but that's not the main subject. Is that however it comes about, every society tries to foster maleness and femaleness in their children.
Well, you're exactly right. So then the next question comes, how did Simone de Beauvoir, I think her name was,
Beauvoir, yeah,
get traction?
The Second Sex is the name of her book.
Second, okay.
Yeah.
Why did these ideas have traction? Just so you can be a cocktail party? And
She was a communist. They were communists, is what their attraction was.
Yeah. But why do people listen to it?
There's something alluring about the idea, and it goes back to the Garden of Eden, that man can change human nature and become something other than who he is. And the ultimate goal of the left is to blur the difference between people so that we become a collective brain, that we become a gigantic one world beehive. You know what I mean? And a way to do that is to blur the sovereignty, individuality, and sex, apparently, so that we no longer know what's male or female. We no longer know what's, we don't know our own minds. I mean, it's this attempt to manufacture and engineer a collectivist state. I mean, I think that's the political side of it.
Well, the Shakers tried that and it didn't work because if you don't have sex, you get wiped out eventually. So
eventually you die off.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's also a far left-wing feminist movement that's been in place for a long time. It actually started in England in the 1970s, which is trying to find out a way to incubate children outside the womb and make it so that women don't have to, be pregnant and this sort of thing. And, this isn't something that I'm just cooking up here. I mean, you could look into it. I forget her name. This one figure in England who's pushing this. And I think it's manifesting now in things like referring to breastfeeding as chest feeding, and anything to do with women is like erased. A birthing person, it's a woman.
So where are the women who should be attacking this?
They are falling flat is where they are. They've been brainwashed along with just about everyone else. That's where they are. And I overheard a conversation recently at a post office where this woman was there with her young daughter. And she says, oh, well, when my children were born and when my son was born, I thought maybe he'd play with dolls and the girl would play with trucks, but it just didn't work out that way. They weren't interested. I mean, no kidding.
I see that, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like this is the product of government-controlled education going way back. I mean, I had a relative of mine, a young woman, ask me recently. She's finally at a point in maturity where she can think on her own. And after all the lies she's heard about me all her life, we were having dinner and she said, how did you become conservative? I knew you were liberal, just like the rest of us when you were younger. And this was after she had went on a rant about how the Trump supporters are all uneducated and ignorant people. And I said, look, in one sense, you are correct to say that most Trump supporters tend to be, quote, uneducated in that we didn't go to the government-run college system. I didn't. I took courses here and there, but I didn't actually go to college. And so I wasn't indoctrinated. And that for many, many years, I talked to professors and experts on my program about how far left the college system has become and how much it had become an indoctrination camp for the left, culturally and in every other way. But I really didn't know this firsthand until a few years ago when I actually became a college student, and I'm a college student now, and I can see it for myself, that they are indoctrinating people, that it is controlled by the left culturally and literally, that they have drummed out conservatives slowly over many decades, and they've promoted leftists, and now they are like indoctrination centers. So that's why I have become, maybe that's that and a couple of other things are why maybe I am more conservative. I didn't go through that, I mean.
Well, we keep coming back to the same thing. Fine, you're in that environment, but what makes you prone or not so prone to being indoctrinated? In my personal case, I learned at a very young age that respect had to be earned. And I never really respected authority based on a playground incident. I mean, it's pretty funny. I think I was 6 years old, got into a fight in the playground. The other kids started it. I got in trouble. They wouldn't listen to me plead my case. And I realized, I'm thinking like to myself, who the hell is this guy lording it over me,
Mm-hmm.
And it just changed my attitude. But you're right. Kids go in there they're ripe to be indoctrinated. And why none of them can think for themselves, it's just mind-boggling. What happened?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it before. I think it's social pressure. You get rewarded for being on the right side and you get punished for being on the wrong side. And a lot of it is now generational because the parents are products of that, even the grandparents. And it's just, so this is the world that they live in. This is their tradition. This is their faith. And that it's a faith that holds the high ground in our culture. So it's kind of assumed, and that the enemy, the lesser, are those who dissent from that. I literally think that they view me as somehow inferior because they don't understand how this could have happened to me. They're scratching their heads.
So you've never been able to successfully convert any of these?
No, it can't even be discussed. It's like I don't exist. It's like I'm invisible. They don't want to hear it because they don't want to have that kind of iron cage rattled. And that's why I was proud of this young woman who's a relative bringing it up to me. Finally, it's like she's finally thinking about this. Maybe something is getting through. I don't know.
You can red pill
her. Yes. I don't want to push, you have to, I just handled it very, very politely and very carefully. I don't want to introduce too much, but yeah, the other thing I told her was that I came to believe in God, and I filled out my first tax return as an independent businessman and was realizing, gee, how much is the government taking here and what are they doing with the money? Yeah. It's a couple of other things. So anyways, Mike, but, to kind of get back to the topic here, I just feel very, very worried that the world is on the verge of launching into World War III with a nuclear power because of these crazy and insane forces that are pushing us in that direction. And I hope that they had better come up with some sort of a peaceful solution soon, because, if anybody, John F. Kennedy, when he first entered office, he told his staff to read the Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman, which was how the world fell into World War I. And it's sort of, I haven't read it. I've read of it. I've read a little of it, but it shows how these almost accidental events, like in that case, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, or some other event, can lead to a chain reaction that could create a world war. And it's like that kind of situation is where we are now. There could be another trigger, and you have people, and you did in World War I, operating behind the scenes who benefits from this. The European countries at that time were deeply into debt to these new international banking establishments who were financing their colonial overreach and their military developments, and they wanted to get paid back. There's that. I think in the case of Ukraine and Russia, there are oil interests. I almost sound like an old lefty when I talk about this, right? The big oil companies, but it's true, right? Oil is the currency of the world. Burisma Oil, these other companies, who knows the kind of shady deals? Ukraine is a pretty corrupt place. And, it's kind of when I see this kind of hero worship of Zelensky, and this villainization like that Putin now is like Hitler, this is manufactured. We're being pushed to view this in a certain way.
And people are so susceptible.
They are.
A T-shirt. It's all
right. He's there where he looks like a TikTok star.
Yeah.
Right. With the green T-shirt, and he's hip looking. Right. And I don't know if that's working, but yeah, it's marketing. They're marketing them like they'd market a can of peas.
Oh, come on. Peter Marks in the Washington Post, who's the theater critic, actually wrote about the Zoom call that Zelensky did and critiqued it based on if it were a play. And
he is a former comedian and an actor, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard, I heard Michael Savage talk about this, that the people around him are the same people that were, running his comedy show. I mean, that's who's running the Ukraine. This would be like having Larry David run the United States or Jerry Seinfeld. This is and they're acting. He's acting. He's an actor, and he's like playing a role and he's into it. And that's crazy. I mean, that's troubling because this is, a lot of people's lives are being affected by
Well,
this.
I don't think it's going to go to World War III, because I think the country has changed a little bit since Vietnam, in that we don't seem to win wars anymore. So you can't keep rolling out the grand and glorious World War II, because that ship has sailed, folks. We haven't won anything since 1945. So
That's right. And, I have to give credit where credit's due. I actually think that Biden has been fairly restrained in this. He hasn't rushed to the war. He has said that we're not going to do it. Now, whether or not he means it in going forward, look, they all say that. I mean, Wilson said, he ran on the platform, he kept us out of war. And the minute he was reelected, we went to war. FDR, right? American men are not going to fight on
troops in a land war in Asia.
That's right. The minute he was elected, we were fighting in Asia. So, I don't hold a lot of candle to it, but so far he's been relatively restrained, and we have to give credit where credit's due. He is in office. We could the legitimacy is another question. We can't talk about that on YouTube, but he's there. He is the president, and so far we're staying out, and that's good.
Works for me.
Yeah. Anyway, Mike. So
Broken clock theory.
What do you have going up on Substack?
Well, I put up a piece, when was it? Yesterday, I think, because I do a little art stuff on there. And this was on an old Supreme song called Love Child. And I analyzed it. It's gotten a lot of hits, and Substack actually put it up on their reader list.
Oh,
which,
it's got traction.
More views, yeah.
Yeah.
But the next one I was gonna do was on this transgender thing, frankly.
Right. Okay. Well, be careful with that one.
Well, I don't know. I kind of think we're on the right side here,
Right side, but that right side can end up getting whacked. I mean, by those who are in power. Let's just put it that way.
Well, again, what's their dog in the
Got to
fight?
do what you got to do. Yeah.
I mean, I was saying a couple of years ago, you're going to destroy women's sports over this.
Oh yeah. No, you absolutely are on the right side.
And but
Women's sports are dead.
And they just don't see it.
I mean, when the Olympics start letting it happen, I mean, that's it. It's over. Anyway, Mike, how do people get to your Substack?
Okay, well, it's called Mike's Point of View. So it's MDS, my initials, MDSPOV.substack.com.
Okay.
And I got some movie reviews up there. One that I was going to do, but it means rewatching a couple of films.
Mm-hmm.
I had occasion to watch The Big Chill again after William Hurt died.
Yeah.
It wasn't that good.
Okay.
Maybe people liked it in 1983.
It doesn't age well.
I didn't think it aged well. I'll probably get really slammed for that, but
right.
It was nothing happened. I mean, there was no resolve. But when Hurt died, they showed scenes from that movie. So I went to revisit it, and no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't recall it, so I can't really comment on it. But yeah, okay.
Well, there was another movie called The Return of the Secaucus 7 here was the other controversy. They came out, I think, 2 years or more before the Big Chill. And the Big Chill was about 7 people getting back together 20-something years after they graduated college. Return of Secaucus 7 was 7 people getting back together after they returned after 20 years of college. And Lawrence Kasdan, who directed The Big Chill, claimed he never saw Secaucus 7. And all right, take him at his word, but good grief. The difference with Secaucus 7 was they pretty much stayed hippies. And the only one who stayed a hippie in Big Chill was the one that killed himself, who was Kevin Costner, who was off screen. Which that was sort of a funny trivia thing, because Big Chill begins with what looks like a guy grooming himself and tying his shoes and so on. And then the camera sort of pans back and you see that, no, they're fixing up his corpse. And the pivotal shot is that they have to take his shirt down, but they expose his wrists, which are all now stitched up. So apparently Costner was going to be in the movie, but they took those scenes out. And supposedly he played the corpse also. So.
I mean, I can't think of any movies. I mean, as part of my class on race, I saw the movie Harriet, which I thought was quite good.
Oh,
it actually did. I got a real sense of what slavery was like in her lifetime and what she went through. And I thought it was a very well done movie. And then the other movie I saw recently, it had to do with, I think, a course my daughter was taking, which was great, was The Caine Mutiny.
Oh, wow.
Bogart. What a great movie, and what an interesting psychological twist in that.
With the ball bearings.
Yeah, with Captain Queeg. Very good movie. I recommend it highly. So anyways, but listen, Mike, thanks for joining me as always.
It's always a pleasure. And let's see what we can do to prevent World War III.
I hope we could do a little pay our part somehow, because it's a real possibility. All right, Mike, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good.